first we need to determine the governing equations, the equations of motion for this quarter car system. So if we have our sprung mass, and this has a position y sprung. We're just going to do everything in terms of k of the wheel and c of the wheel, right? You can put in you can write your own little solver if you want. We have mass unsprung, then we have k of our tire, we have y unsprung, and then our ground might move. We have y, that's a y of the ground. All right, so how do you so our ground might move. All right, so how do you derive any equations of motion? Boo, 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 boo. Boo, 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 boo. Newton's laws. There's more complicated methods, but we just got to do sum of the forces on the unsprung mass equals to the mass unsprung times the second derivative of its position. That's its acceleration. Right? Make sense? So let's see what that gives us. So we have mass unsprung times the second derivative of its position. All right, so what we have here is the tire, it's going to get pulled down of a negative if you have the y unsprung moves up minus y of the ground. Right? So we have y minus y of the ground. So that basically means that's the term for the bottom spring being extended, right? So if the top spring is extended, it'll pull it up. So we have k of the wheel, right? It'll pull it up. So this is y spring minus y unsprung minus y unsprung. So that pulls it up. Plus c of the wheel, so y dot of the spring minus y dot unsprung. So that pulls it up. That's the force of the damper pulling it up. Plus, let's say maybe there's just a force on the unsprung mass. We're just going to say this is 0, but we can leave it in your code. We can leave it in your code so that you can put more stuff, right? Like there might be arrow forces on the sprung mass eventually, right? So we'll leave it in a little term. So for sprung, so you guys can. So now we want to do the same thing on. We want to do the same thing on the sprung mass. So we have mass sprung. So this is unsprung, sprung double dot. It's going to equal to, so this bottom spring, if it gets extended, pulls it down. So we have minus k of the wheel rate times ys minus yu minus, it's basically the opposite of these right two terms, minus c of the wheel y dot sprung minus y dot unsprung plus the force on the sprung mass. Is this okay so far, Javi and Aaron and Jocelyn and Calvin?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Okay, so we're just doing some of the, okay. So we can't just tell MATLAB, hey, these are the equations, start solving, right? Like we need to figure out a way to solve these pretty complex differential equations. So the way to solve differential equations, kind of easy, kind of like a first pass at numerical methods, you get them in a form that you have what you call your state variables, the derivative of them, equal to some matrix A, basic, or say times your state variables, plus, I'm just going to say your inputs. So you usually get your equations in this form. So now our challenge first is, what are our state variables? And how you kind of think about your state variables is like, what things do you need to describe your state? And so the things I think about when describing our state is, first, I think about, I need to know the positions, because that's going to tell me about the forces in the springs. The next thing I need to know are the velocities. So I'm going to have my state variables be y dot. So these are my state variables. I should draw them under here. So here I'm going to have my y sprung dot. I'm going to have my y sprung. I'm going to have my y unsprung dot, and that's just the velocity of my unsprung mass, right? Times y unsprung. And then I'm going to have y of the ground. I don't need the velocity of the ground as much because I don't have a damper between the ground and here. So I don't need to worry about that velocity as much. Okay. So I saw a short there, and now I'm going to put their derivatives. So I have so the derivative of this is just the second derivative of y sprung. This is just the derivative. This is y unsprung, y double dot unsprung, y dot unsprung, y dot. Does everybody buy this so far? Everybody's good so far?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we have
pretty
these
much.
we have these equations we need to make now, right? And so I basically need the acceleration of the sprung mass as a function of all of these, right? Because this A can now have 5 rows basically. It could be a function of these 5 basically, right? So I need to write equations for each of these, right? And my inputs can be force sprung and force unsprung, right? So basically, this A matrix is 5 by 5, and this input matrix is 5 tall, but it's only 2 wide. So it's as wide as this, so this is 2. Right? So I'm not going to put this all the way down into necessarily into matrix form just because I think it's more complicated. So this is what you typically would, and you do matrix algebra, but I'm gonna make our life a little bit easier, and I'm not gonna do that. But I'm gonna solve these 5 equations, right? In terms of, I'm gonna solve these 5 equations in terms of these, and in terms of these 2, right? Which you'll kind of see, they're basically up here, right? So our y double dot of our sprung mass is going to be equal to all of these forces, right? So it's going to be equal to minus the stiffness of the stiffness of the wheel, right? This was wheel. No, oh, that's unsprung. So I switched up the order. So this is sprung. So that's this bottom one. So I have minus k wheel times y sprung minus y unsprung. So you see that's these 2 terms, right? So I'm solving in terms of these. That has those 2 terms minus it was c wheel times y dot sprung minus y dot unsprung, right? And so that was this term and this term. So I'm using those 2 terms now, right? Plus the force on the sprung mass, right? So like this term, for example, is 1, 0 in the top, right? Because I have force sprung, right? And so you can see like the top left term of here, right, is going to be basically my minus CW. And so I'll have like minus CW here, because that'll be CW times y dot sprung. And so that's like, so if you want to do into a matrix, we could try and find all these locations, but let's not bother. And then I have to divide this by the mass sprung, right? So I basically just took this equation and I divided this mass sprung, and you see it's in terms of all these other y variables, right? And then I have my next term, my y dot sprung. So that's just equal to y dot sprung. I already have this variable, it's just equal to this. So that's kind of nice, right? So I can, if I want to get the velocity, I'm already tracking the velocity basically, right? So that's easy. I don't even really need to do it. And then I have my y dot unsprung, sprung y double dot unsprung, right? And so that's this term. So it's minus kt y unsprung minus y ground. And then we're going to have plus k wheel times y sprung minus y unsprung. So that's the opposite of this term. So these 2 terms are just opposite because they're kind of equal and opposite forces. Plus CW y dot sprung minus y unsprung plus the force on sprung mass all over mass unsprung. And then we have like y dot unsprung is going to be equal to unsprung is going to be equal to y dot unsprung, because that's already oh, sorry folks. So I'm doing minus, so it's just basically this equation, right? Minus kt y unsprung minus y to the ground, so that's this tire spring. And then I have these 2 terms that are just the opposite of these 2. And then I have the force on the unsprung, right? So I just have these divided by the unsprung mass. Right? And y unsprung. And I'm not even going to keep track. I don't care about the velocity of the ground. So I'm not even going to track it. I'm just not even going to do that equation, which is nice. Okay. So let's go into MATLAB and let's start coding see how we would start how we'd start. So I mean, what we're basically going to do is every time we're going to do a bunch of different time steps. We're going to step forward in time, and what we're going to do is at every time we're going to solve for the acceleration, the y double dot of the sprung mass. So that's the acceleration of the sprung mass. And if we know the acceleration of the sprung mass, we can basically step forward in time and say that the velocity of that sprung mass at t plus delta t is just going to be equal to some time times the acceleration plus the old velocity. So this is y sprung. Basically what we're going to say is like, all right, the new velocity, all it is what were you accelerating at, right? Times that small change in time plus your old velocity, basically. Right, so we know the acceleration, we can do that. And in a similar way, if we know the velocity, we can get the position, right? So we can say the new position is t plus delta t. So the new position is just going to be the change in time times the velocity plus the old position, right? So we linearize it. Basically, we do really tiny, small steps, and we just step forward in time by saying if we know the acceleration and we know the acceleration, then we can find the velocities, and if we know the velocities, we can find the positions. So that's going to kind of be the way we solve these equations. And all of the accelerations, basically, all of these things get fed back into the accelerations, right? So first I'm going to say is clear all. So that's going to clear all the variables in my workspace. And then I'm going to hit close all, and that's going to close all of the figures. So I'm going to be plotting all the forces and stuff that I care about, right? First thing, we need to tell it everything, right? So we need to know what is our mass sprung. So our sprung mass. So I'll just do Baja for now. We'll say it's like front. So it'll be 120 divided by 32.2. Right? And I use the semicolon so it doesn't print it. And also I'll say this is 120 pounds force. So I'll say, usually I like to say what the units are. So this is in slugs. And so for Baja, it's 120 pounds force. And for formula, maybe it's like 140. Right? Oh, what am I doing? I'm not even in an editor. Such a noob. I'm in the command window.
I thought you were doing that on purpose.
No. All right, so we have our sprung mass, and then we'll just go top down. So we have our K of our wheel, so our wheel rate. So Baja, what did you get for your wheel rate? You got like 20? And that was in pounds force per inch.
Something like that, like, yeah, like 20 pounds per, yeah, about 20 pound force per inch.
We got 49.
Got you. So, okay, so this was, so Baja was about 20, and formula was about 49. All right, so C of our wheel, what do we get for C for Baja?
2.3? 2.2?
You got 2.2 for yours?
No, for Baja, I think it was 2.2.
All right, so I'll do 2.2. So this was in, should I do everything in inches? Shoot, if I'm gonna do everything in inches, oh, this is kind of a decision. Let's do it in inches. So we got to do this by, so we have to do 12 times 32.2. So we need to put this in, this is like slugs. This could be a bad idea. Could be a bad idea.
Just do it how we did before. Isn't that? Or that's kind of what you're doing right now.
I could solve it. It's just gonna screw everything up. Let's just do something that I kind of know will work without doing a lot. So we're gonna do everything in pounds and feet and stuff. Oh. So we're gonna say this is 20 times 12. So we'll just put it in, and so you can see it's got times 12. So this is pounds force per foot when it goes in. And this will be times 12. And this will be in pounds force per feet per second. So Baja, we had 2.2. And formula, what do you have here?
Let's go. 2.3.
2.3. Okay, so and then we have our mass unsprung, we'll say is 20 divided by 32.2. Right, which would be in slugs. So Baja said theirs was about 20 pounds force, and formula said theirs was about 20 pounds force too, right? And this was in pounds force per inch. Formulas was in pounds force per inch. I'm recording this, right? Yeah. Baja's was in pounds force per inch per second. Formulas was in pounds force per inch per second. Okay, and then we just need K of our tire, which for Baja we said it was about 375 times 12. And this was in pounds force per foot. And this was Baja was 375 pounds force per foot, and formula was maybe 600 pounds force per inch. All right, so we can immediately figure out what our ride frequency is. So omega ride is going to be 1 divided by 2 divided by pi times, so we have K wheel times K tire divided by K wheel plus K tire. Right, so that's the effective stiffness divided by mass sprung. And then we also have our damping ratio, dr, our damping ratio. That's going to be 2 times, oh, we probably messed this up. 2 times omega, 2 times, no, it's going to be our CW. So damping rate divided by 2 times omega ride, but we have to multiply this by 2 pi. We never did that before. because you need to put this back in radians per second, times 2 pi times mass sprung. So this is the natural, this is the ride frequency in hertz. This is the damping ratio. All right, so let's see here. Let's see all the mistakes I made. So this was suspension. Mismatched delimiters. Line 10. 1 divided by 2 divided by pi. We have this, we have this. We haven't, yeah, I needed that one. All right, so let's see here. So our ride frequency for Baja I'm getting is high. Oh, that's because I forgot to square root it. Come on, you guys, I need help out here. I'm getting killed. So our damping ratio is a little low, so let's bring this up. Let's bring this up to about 4. Or 4, yeah. All right, so this is not bad. Our damping ratio is about 0.8. Our ride frequency is about 1.2. So that all seems okay. So I'm gonna call this. So I like to use double vehicle. So I mean, ideally, if you ever want someone to use your code besides you, you should probably write as much about it as you can. All right, so now what we need to do. So we're gonna say we have the acceleration of the sprung mass, A of the sprung mass is equal to 0. The velocity, initial velocity of the sprung mass will be equal to 0. The acceleration of the unsprung mass will initially be 0. The velocity of the unsprung mass will initially be equal to 0. Right, so we need to initialize all of these variables, and let's even do y of the sprung mass is equal to 0. So we can make these all non-zero to start if we want, but y of the unsprung mass is equal to 0. And we'll do force on the sprung mass is equal to 0, and force on the unsprung mass is equal to 0. So what I'm going to do is, so we're going to go, so this will be our model inputs. Our numerical model inputs. And maybe we want time length. So we'll do t final. Let's do like 3 seconds. Our dt will be a millisecond. Right, so we're gonna numerically analyze this, so we need to break this up. All right, so we're gonna say we're gonna step through time. So we're gonna go. I'll make a time vector anyway. So t is equal to the vector 0 stepping by dt to t final. So for I equals 1 to the length of t, right? We're gonna solve for what's the acceleration of the sprung mass. Right, so the acceleration of the sprung mass is equal to minus the stiffness, the wheel rate, times we have y of the sprung mass minus y of the unsprung mass minus c, the damping of the wheel, Cw, times the velocity of the sprung mass minus the velocity of the unsprung mass plus the force on the sprung mass, which we could make this like a function of time in the future if we wanted to. And then we have this whole quantity divided by the sprung mass. And what we want to do is we want to solve for this at every moment in time, right? So we'll just make I think it's going to automatically. So we need to say, okay, these are vectors, right? These are going to change with time. And we're going to start with this first thing of time. Right? And then we're going to step forward in time. And we're going to, well, let's also solve for the acceleration of the unsprung mass, I guess, at this point. Acceleration of the unsprung mass is going to be equal to, so in this case, we have minus k of the tire times y of the unsprung mass as a function of time minus y of the ground, right? So then we have plus, so we're gonna have, and then we're just gonna have plus most of these terms, right? So I'm just gonna copy them. So we're gonna have plus this term, have plus this term. It's going to be force on the unsprung and mass unsprung. So this is the acceleration of unsprung mass. Right, so I just took those two equations, right, and I just wrote them out in MATLAB. Cool with everybody so far?
Yeah.
Okay, now what we want to do is we want to calculate the new position. So the y, or so the velocity of the sprung mass at the next step in time is going to equal the acceleration of the sprung mass plus acceleration times dt times the time step plus the velocity of the sprung mass at this time. Right, and then I'm going to do the velocity of the unsprung mass of I plus 1 It's going to be equal to the, so this is acceleration of the sprung mass at this time. So here I have the acceleration of the unsprung mass at this time times dt plus the old velocity of the unsprung mass at this time. Okay, and then for position, I'm going to say y of the sprung mass, the new position of the sprung mass, I plus 1 step forward in time, right? So basically, all of these are just going to be vectors, and I'm going to be marching them forward in time. It's going to be equal to the velocity of the sprung mass of this time step times the time step plus the old position of the sprung mass. I sprung mass. And then I have y of the unsprung mass of I plus 1. It's going to be equal to the velocity of the unsprung mass of I times dt plus y of the unsprung at the last time step. So then let's just plot a couple of things. So let's we'll open a figure. Let's plot time versus, let's say, position of the sprung mass. And we'll plot time versus position of the unsprung mass. So let's just try running it. Right now, it should basically sit still. Nothing should move. They should all sit at their initial positions. But we're going to get some errors. Undefined variable g. Okay. All right, so first things first is I did not. Well, it looks like I thought I commented everything. Okay. So this is classic coding, right? We're gonna have to debug some. Oh, my time variable. There you go. I'm just gonna run this again. And my force sprung is not commented. And line 30 doesn't like something.
The wide ground?
Say it again.
Wide ground?
Oh, good. So y ground of I. And I need to start off with y ground equals 0. Good catch. Okay.
Equals 0 or 1?
Oh, sorry. Equals 0. So error in line 31. So we can see like AS. AS is like 2 values, but this one did not. This one did not run for the second time. we're just going to call these zeros of length t. I just want to make sure. So I'm going to write help zeros n by n. We'll just do size t. So I don't know if it's like going to look for like something and it's going to the second index and doesn't like that it doesn't have a second index, you know? Sometimes it handles that. I want to make these columns. I don't know. I like to handle columns better. Okay. So this I, y, u, y, g. All these are 1001 doubles. That's good. Velocities, y's. That's good. Left and right have different numbers. I'm just going to make this I. Okay, good. So now we're getting to about to the right point. So t and y sprung. Oh, so these went forward one more portion of time, basically. How do we get it not to? So we'll go length of t minus 1. Okay, so they both sit still. That's good. We'll start with that as a victory, right? So they both sit still to start. Code runs. So let's try something simple. Say some of these we might want to. So a few of these we might want to provide initial conditions. So we'll never give it an initial acceleration probably, but we might give it initial velocities, or let's say. So this is the first. So let's be bold. Let's run this thing into a 1-inch bump right off the bat. Just gonna mess with things. Sorry, I'm just thinking about this unsprung equation. So if this goes up to 1, this will be negative and it'll push it up. That's good. Too many equal signs. Okay, here we go. Here's our suspension moving. All right, so let's put a legend on here so we can. Legend. The first one is the sprung, and the second one is the unsprung. Okay. Okay. So you see the unsprung kind of rings for about half a second, but the sprung mass does not ring quite as does not ring quite as much, right? So that's good. And this is, oh, that's a lot though, because this is in feet. It's too far. Let's make it 1 divided by 12. So make it in inches. And then let's look at our response in inches. This y divided by 12. How do you put an X label on again? X label? Y label? So one issue with this right now is it's only the first point that's at this point. So let's do, right? So if you just move this for that one point, I want to make it hit this and go up onto like a curb. This is ones. So the ground should be that big the whole time. Maybe it's not help ones. So. Interesting. Okay. So now it goes up, but it's I was kind of expecting this. I was expecting both to jump up by 1 inch. Right? Like, so if you hit a 1 inch bump, eventually everything should just be 1 inch higher, basically, right? So there's something up with, so this position is good. The stiffness, good. This is good. This is good, okay. This should be times 12. Get on me, guys. Get on me about this. To convert, that's in feet, and I got to switch to inches. Boom. Okay, there we go. Now we're cooking, right? So we just have a car now. Our car just hit a 1 inch bump. Unsprung mass pretty quickly jumps up here, and see this nice little overshoot, right? Let's test some. All right, now let's test. Now we can test a little bit. Let's have it hit. Let's make it underdamped. So I'm gonna change this to 4. Let's change this to 1. Let's see here. Now my damping ratio. Oh wait, that got way underdamped. Sorry. See, that's why you don't want to go too under damped. So wait, instead of 4, I wanted to go to 8. I want to make it more damped. Oh, damping ratio. Huh, I'm still getting 1.6. I'm surprised it's still jumping over. I mean, I guess the one thing you can kind of see though is that this, if this bottom mass always jumps up like far, so this isn't, you can't completely call this a yeah, I mean, this makes sense. It's not ringing. It basically goes up and then it comes back down, right? So it kind of gets hit up and then it comes one back down instead of ringing. Like if we see it, let's go to 6. So let's damping ratio of 1.2. So it's still coming right back down to it. Damping ratio of 4. So we just went under. So now we should expect it to overshoot a little bit. Let's go to damping ratio of 2. So now when we get really kind of underdamped, we start to whoop, whoop, whoop. You start to really see it. You don't really see it necessarily as much. Yeah, it's kind of a little bit of a. All right. So let's hit some more. Let's hit some more fun stuff. Let's say we have a velocity in the x direction. So now let's hit like a ramp, right? So I want to hit a ramp. So my velocity in the x direction, my velocity in the x direction, I don't know, let's say we're going pretty fast at 20 feet per second. So what I kind of want to convert here, sorry, I got all your faces down at the bottom, over here. So what I want to kind of convert is like, let's say I know I go up a ramp and then let's say I fall off. So let's say I know the y as a function of x. I need to convert this to the y of the ground as a function of time. And so what I'm gonna do is, so if I know y as a function of x, if I can get x as a function of time, I can plug that in. I can plug that in here, right? So my x as a function of time is just going to be equal to velocity times time, right? So if I know my y of x, so for example, let's say I want y to equal to, let's say I want to go up an inch, so that'll be 1/12 of a foot, right? I want to go up an inch in about 6 inches long, right? So my y will be up divided by the run, which will be 6 inches. So it'll be a half a foot. So that'll be rise over run. So that'll be half a foot. So it'd be 1/2. But then I also need to divide by that number by 12. No, that's half a foot. I already divided it, half a foot. Okay. So that would be times x. So this is x over 6. So that means if I go 6 inches, so it means if I go to the right, if I go to the right 6 inches, I'll be up basically one, if I go over, wait, this is in feet. If I go over 1 foot, I'll be up 1/6 of a foot. Okay, yeah, that's right. So that was 2 inches. And so let's see here. So then if I want y as a function of time, sorry, I'm just thinking about this stuff as we go. That'll equal our velocity times time over 6. Okay, that looks good. And we only want it for 1 foot. So we only want it for t. We only want it because we want it to drop off, right? So we only want it for t. T is, let's see here. So 1 foot divided by the velocity. So we want 1 foot. Velocity. So we'll need to cut it off at that point. Okay, so let's try and make our hit a little 2-inch ramp basically. So basically what we're going to have is I think this is the easiest way to do this. So let's do for 4 I equals 1 to length of t. So we'll go through all of time, and we're going to define what the y of the ground is. So we'll have y of g of I. So we'll have to define Vx first. So Vx. So this will be so I. So this will be t of I. So that's time basically, right? So it's going to step through the time variable. Times the velocity in the x direction, Vx, divided by 6. If t of I is greater than 1 foot divided by v of x, then y of the ground is equal to 0. It's going to go back to 0. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna plot a figure. So I guess we can also plot. Let's plot.
Did you put 0 apostrophe?
I'll check. Hold on. I'll plot y of the ground too. Yeah, no apostrophe. All right, I'm sure I messed something up here. So it looks like my y of g, no, my y of g did not run. Oh, y of g of I. Let me replot this because I need to, oh no, it should have run. So why does my y of the ground go so high? So y ground So it should basically go up to 0.1667. So that times 12, what's 0.1667 times 12? 2 inches. Oh, okay, yeah, so it goes up to 2 inches. Okay, that worked. That's, I forgot, it's gonna go 2 inches over a foot. Okay. So let's find this. Okay, so you see the ground slowly goes up. You see the tire follows it, slightly delayed, right? And then it drops off and the tire drops real quick, right? It actually compresses into the ground. So the only way the unsprung mass can go to 0, that basically means the tire is getting compressed, right? And so here you see the car slowly goes up, it drops back down and comes under. That's not bad. We haven't talked about roll stiffness, so we haven't modeled much roll stiffness. But yeah, so maybe, so this is like a Baja car. Let's see, let's go a little crazier. So let's send her off a big ramp. So, so we'll make this deeper. So I'll make this divide by 3, and let's make this 3 feet. So let's see. All right, so this is a 1 foot. This is a 1 foot jump, basically, right? So here's the 1 foot jump. Comes, hits, comes back down, right? So some interesting things we can start to also plot. Let's do a new figure. Let's plot the forces on the stuff, right? So figure, so let's plot. So instead of the position, let's plot the acceleration. Times the mass times, that's good. Let's do the same thing here. A unsprung times mass unsprung. And so this is, so this should be in pounds force. No, so this is force in pounds force.
You have a multiplication symbol? Yeah.
Thank you. So this still looks right. What's this position? It should be force. Oh, excellent. This is the Y label. And this X label is the same. I mean, some other things you should do is you should make some metric, and you should make sure that your time step is small enough, right? Like, so we should try this at like different time steps just to make sure this time step is small enough, because your time step should not be affecting your results. So you should pick something like this max force and make the time step start something like really fine, like maybe even like 10 times finer than this. and then you can bump it up and just plot how does like find something like this peak value, how is it changing with time? But it looks like, you know, they're -2, -4,500. Even if I get rid of 2 decimals, it seems like I'm still capturing that. I mean, so you see when it comes, well, this is a little bit artificial, to be honest with you. The jump off the cliff, at least for this tire, because the bottom of the tire gets pulled down instantaneously. There's no allowance. We'd have to do something special in the code so it does not pull the bottom wheel. You know, because right now, basically the bottom of the wheel is following the road perfectly, right? So it doesn't allow it to jump and then land, essentially. So that's an interesting issue. To solve for the landing issue, let's see here. So the it's like the negative accelerations should like of the unsprung mass should never be more than -g. So that'd be interesting. So let's try to make it so it can't pull it down. So we'll say so we'll do a little thing here. We'll say if the acceleration of the unsprung mass is less than 32.2, if the acceleration is less than 32.2, then A unsprung equals 32.2. And that should be negative. Never accelerates down more than -32. Let's try that. That didn't change it much. Oh, maybe I didn't have an I. Interesting. This looks like it's bouncing off the ground. Let's see here. Okay, so here you see it goes off the jump, and the unsprung mass goes up for a little bit, right? So it's just going down at -g, and then it comes down, right? And here's where it hits the ground after about 0.7 seconds or so. It hits the ground. So here's where it hits the ground, and it gets hit up about 300-400 pounds force. So there you go. I mean, there's a model for the forces on the suspension when it hits off a jump. So here's a, so we'll call this a jump at, so let's see here. So this is 3 feet long, right? And this is over, so this is so the rise over the run. So this is the run equals 3 times the rise. So jump at 20 feet per second, which is pretty fast. That's like 25 miles per hour, I think. I forget. Wait. feet. So with miles per hour, there's 5,000 feet. Yes, wait, miles per hour is less. So maybe this is like 15 miles per hour. So this is in feet per second.
13.6 miles per hour.
What's that?
It's about 13.6.
13.6. Okay, nice. All right. And then what was our other one, right? Before we just said y of g equals ones. This was maybe hitting a 2-inch bump. 2 divided by 12 times ones size t. This was
it 0 size t? 0 size t?
this was a bump, so like I had to go up a little bit. So this was hitting a bump, hitting a straight bump. So this is like the simplest case. Oh shoot, I'm late for my meeting. Hitting a straight bump. This one was jump at 20 feet per second. So this was hitting a straight bump. So this is a 2-inch tall bump. These are the positions. So this is interesting. Oh, so this is interesting. So it like this one, so we got to be a little careful here because this one's hitting a bump. It sent it up into the air a little bit, right? And then came back down, right? So, but the initial spike was like 700. So we might have to make like a small ramp, right? So we can decide if we want to let it get knocked off the ground a little bit or not. It's kind of maybe a little artificial, but
Is it like saying hitting a rock, or is it like you're gonna?
I was just like you like go and you you just like hit like a little raise, you know, like there's something that you're going
like
from
a curve.
Yeah, like a curve, yeah. So this is the same thing though. It's kind of because it's so steep, so you'd kind of want to make more of like a rounded profile. So let's say like, so hitting a rising bump. So it's going to be similar to this, right? But it might, let's have it rise a little faster. So the run equals the rise basically. And let's have it go up in like let's have it go up 2 inches. So if 2 divided by 12. So it goes up. This is 2 inches tall. And afterwards, it's going to go up to 2 divided by 12. I know I'm probably like going through kind of this math kind of quickly. So yeah, so it kind of quickly goes up onto this bump. It's sending it up and off. So let's do this. Let's do this. So this is Let's get rid of this part that allows it to leave the ground. So in this case, it kind of just goes up these two and it pushes it. So this just kind of stretches. So it basically means the tire stays on the ground. But this is good, right? I mean, you can see like hitting a 2-inch bump over 2 inches will do to your car. So here it kind of rings. I think we're still at this low damping ratio, 0.82. Oh, that was the force. So yeah, so it kind of comes up and comes back down. But so you could see how you could try and get your car to respond in different ways with different damping ratios. I mean, this is nice too in that it kind of will give you your ride frequency and your damping, kind of your damping ratio, and you can kind of see what some of these values, you know, how they actually control it. So I don't know. I mean, if I was designing this, I would want to put together a half car model with a front and a back wheel and hit these bumps, right? I mean, this took an hour. I mean, I have all year, you know. Imagine how complex you could go if you had a year.
18 wheeler.
but I don't know. So I think this one, it gives power to some of the other numbers that we see, right? Like, all right, what happens when we hitting bumps? What happens when we're going off, you know, here's a straight bump hitting kind of a rising bump. And you can start to look at, you know, the forces on your different. So these are, you know, forces as F equals MA, right? But I mean, you can tell it's not my first time writing something like this, probably, and I probably went too fast, but I recorded it so you can watch the video. But SI units would be nicer, but all of our data, everything else we talk about is in English units, so that's the reason I lent myself towards these English units. But you see the hassle of like being super careful with them. And also like hertz, like you should just operate in radians per second. But you know, so that's why we gotta be careful with these 2 pi's and stuff. But all right, so I'll sign off here unless, was there any questions from like Aaron or Hobby? And this was just one tire in the front, right? This is not, you know, so you could do this would be different in the front and in the back and stuff, right? And this didn't even look at roll stiffness, you know, so you'd also want to start thinking about roll stiffness.